Hello and welcome to your full moon forecast for the full moon in Capricorn on July 10th, 2025. I'm your astrologer, Cawnawyn Mor. Today we're going to take a look at the full moon chart, and if you're new to astrology, I hope that this can provide some guidance in how I read a natal chart just from the very first glance. I have not looked at this chart yet, and hopefully teaching you some techniques on how to get started learning how to read the chart. If you're not learning to read it already, you should be. This is how we learn astrology, and most importantly, we're going to be looking at the aspects that this full moon is making. That relationship chemistry is where the astrology is at. As a quick reminder, I always use an Aries rising chart, so the rising sign and the houses will have no effect in this chart, but if you take this time, 1:37 p.m., and convert it to your time zone, this specific time, you'll be able to look and see how this chart is affecting you, because the house placement will change, the rising sign will change, and you can take the same time, put it on your chart, and see what houses this full moon is lighting up for you. So a full moon is always a sun-moon opposition, and here we are. There's the opposing sign. Here is our sun at 18 degrees of Cancer, opposing our moon at 18 degrees of Capricorn. All of my cardinal sign people, those are everyone with Aries and Cancer and Libra and Capricorn. You are definitely being affected by this moon. If we think about an opposition, right, it's always dealing with an axis. And if we think about the Cancer axis with Capricorn, these two signs together, they're bringing in opposing energies, of course, because this is an opposition, and trying to get us to weave them together, integrate them somehow, confront them. We are being exposed to them. And so really what an opposition presents to us is typically something from the outside that is presented that we have to reckon with, relate to, understand. It acts as like a mirror. So are we like that thing, or are we not like that thing? If we think about the energies of Cancer-Capricorn, this is an interesting axis because a lot of people kind of call us the parent axis, because mother being represented by the feminine nature of Cancer energy, and then father being represented by the Saturnian nature of Capricorn. But I really find this to be quite limiting personally. If we think about both signs, they're actually both yin signs. They're both reflective. They are both more introspective, right? They are more focused on receiving rather than manifesting or expansive. Yin energy is more inward. And so Capricorn is considered a yin or a feminine sign, yet it is ruled by Saturn. So it's Saturn's more yin, reflective, receptive energy, which doesn't make it strictly masculine or father. But Capricorn is, of course, very concerned with legacy. Why? Because Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is concerned with matters of time. In Capricorn, Saturn tends to look backward, and in Aquarius, its other rulership, it tends to look forward, right? And so in Capricorn, we're reflective. We're looking backward in time to those who have done this before, the systems in place, the legacies that were created, the traditions that have been laid down, and that is what Capricorn is typically concerned with preserving, or at least upholding in some manner. There's a great pride in that. And also Capricorn is trying to understand the system that it belongs to. The hierarchy, if you will, you can look at it. Of course, Capricorn has been sort of shoved into this patriarchal role because it can climb the mountain, in other words, the pyramid, right? And so that ambition, that drive that once we viewed as being quite wild and raw and primal has now been kind of conformed to fit into this structure that says to be ambitious, that must mean you're playing into this like wrong system of patriarchy, when actually Capricorn energy, this is, first of all, it's a sea goat, right? The goat is one animal that can traverse one of the highest peaks in the world, whereas the fish goes down, down, down into the depths of the ocean. So what is this? It's a sign of extremes, actually. And then you combine that with Saturnian reflective, looking backward in time to tradition, to values that are being upheld by our ancestors, by the past, what has come before, what has worked before, what is practical. And also we consider that it is yin and reflective and receptive energy, working on receiving information, receiving the fruits of its labors. Capricorn, I think, is thoroughly misunderstood, to be quite honest. And then what's really interesting is now we have the sun in Cancer. Cancer is ruled by the moon, but the moon is in its opposing sign of Capricorn. So let's talk about the moon for a minute. The moon rules over the sign of Cancer. Cancer being really, truly just Latin for the word crab, right? Cancer is the crab. And so if we think of a crab, we think of claws and scuttling creatures along the sand in an oceanic environment. The insides of crab are tasty and delicious, but they're soft, right? This once again is a yin or reflective sign, and its rulership, the moon, is very concerned also with the past, of being reflective. The moonlight is a much different energy than the sunlight. It's cyclical. It comes out in phases. It goes through evolutions. It wanes and waxes. And so it's a very, very different energy, of course, than the sun's energy. And the sun being in Cancer is a nice introspective look at masculine and feminine energy coming together when the sun is in Cancer. The same way, if we look at the Saturnian influence of Capricorn and the moon being in Capricorn, that's kind of another example of that sort of masculine drive and ambition, but mixed into a feminine expression of Capricorn, let alone the moon in Capricorn. So if you have a moon in Capricorn, I'd be so curious, because I'd love to know your experience with any of this, and if any of this is kind of resonating with your experience of your own feelings of how you feel threatened, perhaps, or how you feel like you're trying to preserve a legacy, preserve a tradition. Providing is a big word for Capricorn. They are here to lay the foundations, very Saturnian, lay the foundation that everything can rest on and feel secure and safe. This is another axis of security as well, similar to the Taurus and Scorpio axis. And now remembering also that Cancer and Capricorn are cardinal energies. So cardinal energy is known for being at the beginning of a season. It's initiatory. It starts things. It begins, it goes, it volunteers to be first. So how does that show up when it's in a reflective sign? Especially when it's ruled by the moon and by Saturn. And I know I keep pointing over here to the sun and saying it's ruled by the moon, and that's because the sun is being ruled by the moon. And the moon is being ruled by Saturn. If we go look at what Saturn is doing, it's in another cardinal sign. Now, before we dive too deeply into Saturn, let's go back to this. So how this could be showing up, right? The sun in its Cancer expression is saying, I'm bringing light and vitality through the care and nurturance of others, of self. Cancer energy is that peak sun, so it's kind of a moment of pause where we can recognize that we are in the lightest part of the year in the Northern Hemisphere and see the abundance of summer, the beauty of summer. And the sun is here soaking in all that glory and saying, I'm going to nurture myself. I'm going to pause a moment, create my sanctuary, create my peace, my security, and also bolster my security as well for the sense of self. I'm going to protect Cancer, myself. And then you have the moon in Capricorn that says, well, I'm actually very concerned with my ambition, my drive, the things I need to do in order to provide for those I care about. And sometimes that moon in Capricorn can really become self-sacrificing because it says I need to care for everybody else's needs. And by doing the thing that I'm driven to do, go after the career, go after the, whatever is at the top of their mountain, right? The heart cares deeply for the pursuit of that greater ideal, greater mission in life. It is for, in its mind, the care and providership of others. It wants to make sure everybody is feeling nurtured, cared for, safe, and in an environment where they feel secure. And so it's going to work tirelessly to make sure that happens. That sun in Cancer might look at that and say, hey, actually, you don't recognize how selfish you're being. That moon in Capricorn is, quite frankly, only focused on work, only focused on the ambition, only focused on the mission or the goal. And you're forgetting that there's a lot of emotional needs that need to be met, and that sun can feel starved, right? With the moon, its rulership all the way across. It's as far away as it can get. It's hard for the moon to tap into actually its own needs. You might even be playing this out in your own life where you're feeling ragged or run down, or you've just been burnt out by the amount that you're having to push and hustle and work harder and harder and harder for what reward. And also you might be coming from the moon in Capricorn perspective where you're looking around you and saying everybody is really caught up in how much they're feeling right now, when actually can we just get practical here? Can we deal with the real details? Can we look at the structure around us and say, this is actually what's really going on? Because I'm trying to build a scaffolding over here and all you want to do is talk about the emotions of what's going on and how that's what's fueling you, when actually we should be providing something a little bit more secure, more stable. Because while the sun in Cancer, a lot of Cancer energy gets just pigeonholed into it's emotional, right? And it is emotional. It's a water sign. It's ruled by emotion. but good luck trying to fight against a crab, right? Like, they have claws, they have a shell for a reason. They are fiercely here to protect. That is mama bear energy. Don't mess with that. And so yes, while the emotions might be a huge driver in this situation, they are going to go after what it is they want, teeth and claws bared if necessary. And they are usually here to make sure they are defending what they love, who they love, themselves, their sense of peace, their sense of security. The moon in Capricorn could really be looking at like this whole situation as, why are we getting all up in arms about this? Why are we getting so defensive? These are the facts. Like, should I be more on the defense here? Should I, because the moon will question itself in Capricorn, and it'll be a little bit more anxious and say, well, have I thought of everything? Capricorn energy can be very anxious because Saturn, as the ruler, is trying to cover all the bases. And once again, we all come back to safety and security with this axis. So has it thought through every single scenario to make sure it is a foolproof system to make it safe? A lot of times the Capricorn can kind of spiral into, I haven't done everything I possibly can. And so it's always trying to cover its bases. And what happens? It gets burnt out and exhausted. So just be aware that if you're finding that you're resonating with either one of these energies, the point of an opposition is not just to be challenging, although it is, right? It's to find a balance, to strike a balance between these two things. Recognize that this polarity is happening as above, so below, as within, so without. It's happening inside of us if it's playing out in a relationship. That is the universe inviting you to partake in that exposure and that integration of that wisdom. Let those lessons come for you and be open to them. You're being confronted by somebody or something that feels very challenging, very frustrating. If it's triggering you, there's a reason why. Maybe examine that within yourself if you have the capacity to do so. And if you're feeling really burnt out and exhausted, take a cue from the Cancer energy and find that peaceful sanctuary that you need and take the rest. Don't let the moon in Capricorn boss you around and give you all the stress and anxiety of, I haven't gotten it done yet. It's not perfect. It's not the way it needs to be. That moon will give you all sorts of insecurity around that. And remember, the sun needs the space, the moment to pause, to reflect, and recognize that it needs to receive. I mentioned Saturn, and Saturn is a big deal because Saturn is ruling, as you saw, the sun and the moon. Let's go through that again one more time, just because I know some of you are learning. The sun in Cancer. Sun in Cancer right now is being ruled by the moon because the moon is Cancer's ruler. So we go to the moon. Well, who is the moon being ruled by? It's in the sign of Capricorn. And now we go back and there is Saturn, Capricorn's ruler, but Saturn is in Aries. And look how close this is to Neptune. Oh my goodness. Saturn, Neptune in Aries, basically conjunct, just minutes. Like, look how few minutes apart these are right now. That's insane. So basically all summer we're going to have these two planets, these mammoth planets. I mean, they're way out in the solar system. These are our extended way out there planets, right? They rule over not just our individual selves, but like our entire generation of peers, right? Their rulership is huge. So they cover a lot more than just your individual feelings and your individual discipline or your individual delusion. This is like the delusion of everybody you grew up with and their friends and neighbors and siblings, right? So Saturn and Neptune have enormous realms of influence, and they are just a breath away from each other in the sign of Aries, in these very beginning degrees of Aries. They're never going to meet this summer. They get so close. This is one of the like closest moments that they have to each other, where they're just right there, and then they're going to go backwards into Pisces and they're going to separate again. And it will not be until next February of 2026 that they are going to come together finally in a conjunction. I think all of us can feel that restlessness, that intensity, that unrequited desire where it's like just almost there and yet we cannot quite grasp it. So you might find that be a theme, not just for this full moon. Something is almost perfect, but not quite. Something has almost been fully communicated, but something was held back. You were able to almost completely commit into something, but it wasn't quite right. And what I want to just remind you that this summer, you're going to get a taste of whatever this Saturn and Neptune era in Aries is going to look like. Saturn will spend 2.5 years here. Neptune will spend 12 years in Aries. So it's going to be a long haul, okay? We've been living in Neptune and Pisces, the previous sign, since 2012. So this is a huge landmark, like opening placement for this conjunction to happen. And it's not quite going to make it. So we are getting a preview this summer of something that will likely come to fruition next February in 2026. And so maybe you find that that's part of the story where you're like grasping, reaching for something that feels like a new dream, feels like the beginning, feels like the right moment, feels like the right choice, and yet it's not quite time. The bits are not quite lining up, right? All the tasks are not quite being completed. So whatever that feels like, I don't want you to meet yourself with a lot of frustration and a lot of anger because you're not getting things quite right. I want you to recognize to have grace with yourself and that you're actually in a preview period right now. So whatever this relationship dynamic being ruled by this Saturn, which by the way, this is only going to be further confusing because Saturn is so close to Neptune. Okay, Saturn wants to make things concrete and real, stable, and like actually you can see the structure of whatever the thing is. The system is like laid out in front of you. It is very practical, real, tangible. Where Neptune is all things intangible. It is the dream world. It is all that we feel, but we can't physically touch, right? And so it makes it confusing and it dilutes it, it blurs, it dissolves. And so anything that you feel like is maybe quite almost just right there, it's gone in an instant and you said, where did it go, right? Or maybe all the effort and the momentum you're getting just feels like it's getting dissolved away by something on the ocean tide. So please have grace with yourself around this time. Recognize this is a confusing time. There are gifts here. And so how do we tap into them? Recognize that these are the very first degrees, the first breaths of Aries. We are in the seed moment. You are not meant to, this is like spring equinox energy. You are not meant to see the sprouts quite coming out yet. They're still below the ground. So what does that mean for you? You get to go drop back to the drawing board. This is not the time to commit wholly, even though Saturn wants you to commit. You don't have to completely commit to what the vision is, what the mission is, what the point of the relationship was, what the goal is for the team or for whatever the ambitious goal you have is, right? Let things be a little bit in flux because there might be some insights there that you would miss if you were just spending the time bashing your head against the wall in frustration. This is a really potent time full of hopeful and beginning energy, a lot of spark, right? A lot of, and all of the elements are truly represented here because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this entire setup right now. So here we're going to divert a little bit. We're going to add in the air energy, right? Here's our fire, our frustrating, delusional, creative, rapid fire, right? Of Aries, the very beginning, starting the new dream. We have, of course, the moon in the earth sign of Capricorn, trying to remain practical, trying to give structure, trying to acknowledge tradition and that which was laid before and tangible. And then we also have the sun in a water sign, right? Where it's feeling itself. It's trying to tap into a deeper truth that is felt and not seen. It is empathetic to others. It is tapping into what others need in order to nurture them and care for them as well as care for the self. So all of these elements are being represented. And now let's bring in air. Now, of course, I've been talking a lot about Pluto and Aquarius, and please feel free to watch my previous full moon episodes or my listen into my Bonfire Babble podcast episodes where I chat about the zodiacal forecast every single month. And I've definitely been talking a lot about Pluto. But I also want to bring up just recently, days before this, 3 days before this, Uranus entered Gemini. Uranus in Gemini is really, it's a big deal. And if you've been listening to any astrologer, you probably know a million reasons why. Namely, in the United States, this is our Uranus return. It's a huge deal. We're having a Pluto return, let alone Uranus return. And now they're both in air signs and they're in a trine together. They're working harmoniously together. Uranus in an air sign is now moving at lightning speed. It's supporting this Pluto, this transformational process going into the future. It's also in support of this Saturn and Neptune right now. It's kind of kicking off, lighting that spark. What does fire need in order to burn? Uranus in an air sign, oxygen. And Uranus says, okay, I'm ready to go, because the last 7 years it's been stuck in Taurus and Taurus doesn't want to move. Uranus is all about movement. It's about lightning inspiration. It's about explosive action and explosive radicalization, revolutionary action that is going to be shocking and totally disrupt systems. Like everything we talked about Saturn, Uranus says no to all of that. No, I want what's different and new and not the status quo, not traditional. I want to completely shock people out of that. So we have all of this in support of each other, and it's talking to the big ruler of this full moon. So much energy. You might be really seeing this play out in a way that is like very much There's so much happening on the external. It's really hard actually to integrate with what's going on the inside because you're just trying to keep track of everything happening on the outside. Uranus in Gemini is bringing news lightning fast. It's bringing new this, new that, news this, news that. Like, it's crazy the amount of data that is coming in, and it's lightning fast. You better keep up or else you will be left behind. With all of this going on, it can be really hard to integrate that wisdom of whatever is coming into. This is a tough full moon because there's just so much happening. Oh, and we could talk about other things as well, but I think this is enough to say, please, if you can, I want you to step into that place of the sun's energy in Cancer, remembering that we are in the midst of Cancer energy season and that we are meant to be fortifying, protecting, nurturing, caring for ourselves so that way we may actually care for and provide for others, right? And then letting that moon know that it is safe in its exploration of those ambitious ideas, but not to get too strangled into what it's supposed to look like. We're in a radical new time and the dream is just being imagined. So you are in that planning phase. Remain flexible wherever you possibly can, which with the Capricorn full moon, I feel like this is very much the serious moon typically, but this is by far not the most serious full moon in Capricorn we are having. This is a wild, crazy, radical new expression, and the full moon in Capricorn is just trying to learn the system as fast as it can so it can actually keep swimming. If you're resonating with this energy, I would love to know. Please leave me a comment below and I would love to chat with you about how this is showing up in your own life, in your own chart. Please take some deep breaths out there. Give yourself that deep care, that nurturance, because that's how we're going to get through this. The emotions are crazy right now. So what can you do to bring light, sun, life, vitality back into yourself so that way those emotions can balance out a little bit. We can integrate this wisdom and recognize we are flexible. We are adaptable, we are resilient. And I know for any of you more skilled astrologers out there looking at this or this that I missed, I know there's so much to cover. But I wanted to get started with this, just some of the macro and the micro energies going on right now, and I hope you guys have found this helpful and enjoyable. Of course, as always, be sure that you check out my forecast on Bonfire Babel. You can always book a reading with me. My recorded readings, I get back to you within 72 hours of when you book, or of course you can book Zoom one-on-one with me to have a reading as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remain flexible, remain open. The lessons and the gifts are out there, and blessed be.